Yeah, it's probably the mic, not. It's probably the speaker, not the mic. What number is that? 329? Sorry, 10. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I got. Prabhuji, Mataji was saying that she thinks that it's the speaker that's defective, not the mic, with regard to the echo. But we only have. Oh, it's gone. Oh, you got rid of. Is that okay now? Is there no echo?
No.
Okay, bravo. Yes, please. 329, 29, 10. Wunderbar. Thank you. That's okay. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Giribaladhari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Giribaladhari Shoranandana Janardan Yashoranandana Janardan Yamuna Tira Pranachari Yamuna Tira Pranachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaladhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaladhari Shoranandana Janardan Yashoranandana Janardan Yamuna Tira Pranachari Yamuna Tira Pranachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, Text 10. Karmani haramudisya. Karmani haramudisya. Parasmin vatadarpanam. Parasmin vatadarpanam. Yajadyastavyamiti va. Yajadyastavyamiti va. Pritag bhavasa satvika. Pritag bhavasa satvika. Karmaniharam uddesya. Karmaniharam uddesya. Parasmin vatadarpanam. Parasmin vatadarpanam. Yajadyastavyam iti va. Yajadyastavyam iti va. Pritag bhavasa satvika. Pritag bhavasa satvika. Kamaniharam uddesya. Parasmin vatadarpanam. Yajadyastavyamiti va. Pritag bhavasa satvika. Karmaniharam uddesya. Parasmin vatadarpanam. Yajadyastavyamiti va. Pritag bhavasa satvika. Karmaniharam uddesya. Parasmin vatadarpanam. Yajadyastavyamiti va. Pritag bhavasa satvika. Yeah, it's just on the shelf. Mm-hmm. Karma. Fruitive activities. Fruitive activities. Niharam. freeing himself from. Uddisya, with the purpose of. Parasmin, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Va, or. Tatarpanam, offering the result of activities. Yajet, may worship. Yastavyam, to be worshipped. Iti, thus. Va, or. Pritakbhava, separatist. Saha, he. Saatvikaha, in the mode of goodness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrities of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. Purport. The Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, along with the Brahmacharis, Grihastas, Vanaprasthas and Sannyasis, are the members of the 8 divisions of Varnas and Ashrams, and they have their respective duties to perform for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When such activities are performed and the results are offered to the Supreme Lord, they accord karma arpanam, duties performed for the satisfaction of the Lord. If there is any inebriety or fault, it is atoned for by this offering process. But if this offering process is in the mode of goodness rather than in pure devotion, then the interest is different. The 4 ashrams and the 4 varnas act for some benefit in accordance with their personal interest. Therefore, such activities are in the mode of goodness. They cannot be counted in the category of pure devotion. Pure devotional service, as described by Rupa Goswami, is free from all material desires. Anya abhilashita sunyam. There can be no excuse for personal or material interest. Devotional activities should be transcendental to fruitive activities and empiric philosophical speculation. Pure devotional service is transcendental to all material qualities. Devotional service in the modes of ignorance, passion, and goodness can be divided into 81 categories. There are different devotional activities such as hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, offering prayer, rendering service, and surrendering everything. And each of them can be divided into 3 qualitative categories. There is hearing in the mode of passion, in the mode of ignorance, and in the mode of goodness. Similarly, there is chanting in the mode of ignorance, passion, and goodness, etc. 3 multiplied by 9 equals 27, and when again multiplied by 3, it becomes 81. One has to transcend all such mixed materialistic devotional service in order to reach the standard of pure devotional service, as explained in the next verse. Translation. When a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrities of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. Om Jnanatimidandasya Ganagana Shalakaya Chakshum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gramayam Dadati Swabhadantikam. Hare Krishna. So this is a very profound area of Krishna consciousness and the practical application thereof. The 8 divisions of the society for Dharma Vagra are designed to gradually elevate the living entity up to the stage of pure devotional service. So, in one sense, they're material categories for the gradual elevation. Is that too loud? Am I speaking too loud? No. Loud voice anyway. So these are the different categories, and externally they are material categories designed to gradually elevate the living entity through the various stages. But in reality, pure devotional service, at least through the Brahminical stage, can be achieved through at any time in the ashrams. So in a sense, they're external, but they obviously have a design and a purpose. So naturally, the 4 varnas are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. Ahimsam Satyam Akradas Chagashan. So the qualities of the Brahmana, I'm just trying to recall the verse. Arjavam. The qualities of the Brahmana are Arjavam, simplicity, purity, truthfulness, austerity, tolerance. Whereas the qualities of the Kshatriya, Chatram, are power, heroism, yudhecha papalayanam, not backing down in battle, yudhecha papalayanam, dhanam, charity, and offers protection to the other varnas. Whereas Krisi Goraksha Vanijam, Krisi Goraksha, which means farming, Goraksha, protection of the cows. It's amazing how many slokas you'll forget on the Vyasasan. Yeah, say it loud, Prabhu. Bhavajam. Yes, so that verse is split into 2, and it refers to the activities of the Vaishya and also the Shudra, which is Shuddhya, service and labor to others. And Prabhupada gives the analogy that this is like a human body, in that the Brahmana represents the head or the intellect of the body, where the brain is stored. The Kshatriyas represent the arms, which is the strength for protection of the other, for self-defense, really, of the body is the arms, principally. The Vaishyas, compared to the stomach, which is the digestions, to keep things moving, to keep nourishment. The economics are the nourishment of any state or community. And then the Shudras represent the legs, which are to move the body, being the vessel, for whatever it needs to do. So in this way, each part is interdependent. It is dependent on the other part to fulfill its role. Naturally, however, and within this, before I digress, And within these various varnas, these 4 varnas, there are 4 ashrams. Generally speaking, 4 ashrams. But they do change. So in the Brahminical varna, the ashrams are brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Kshatriya has brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, without sannyas. Without sannyas is my understanding. And Vaishya is brahmachari, grihastha, and same with Sudra. So these are all designed for the gradual elevation. So we may want to convert the whole world to Krishna consciousness, but my understanding is that Prabhupada knew that it was only ever going to be a certain section of society that would constitute the Brahminical part of this. So when the whole world becomes Krishna conscious, it's not going to be full of Brahmanas. So because the body needs all parts, so they're all gradually elevated. Just as it is described that should the Kshatriya perfectly perform their duty, then they're elevated to the heavenly planets. And then they will take birth again. So this is the gradual evolutionary process, if you will, of Krishna conscious transmigration of the soul, actually. So naturally, the best position to be in is the Brahminical position, whereby that is the best opportunity to obtain what is the sanam bonum of this purport, which is pure devotional service. So this is what is described. And it is a topic that comes up repeatedly in terms of what is sattva gun and what is Suddha Sattva. Suddha Sattva being a pure, completely pure, untainted with any material desires, of which there are at least 81. And to my understanding, this is just the first, 81 is just the start, and there are obviously, virtually speaking, unlimited permutations or combinations of material desires. So it may seem a very intellectual and philosophical point, but it's actually very practical, because each devotee must somehow work out how are they going to run this marathon called Krishna consciousness, because it's not a sprint, it's indeed a marathon. It is a lifelong endeavor to become Krishna conscious. So even though it's theoretically possible to become Krishna conscious in a moment, for most of us it will take much longer. And so one must intelligently apply the philosophy in order to survive the philosophy. In that, how am I going to remain in Krishna conscious, in Krishna's service? I may want to be a lifelong book distributor, but practically we have seen this is very rare that someone can do that. So, and not that book distribution automatically qualifies one into the category of Suddha Sattva. That can also be tainted with so many material desires with book distribution. Naturally, the more obvious ones that we want to be recognized as a big Sankirtan devotee, recognition, or we just may not want to be embarrassed. We may not want to come. We don't want to come home with a donut and have that announced or not announced. So we may, but I mean, these are different forms of material motivation, actually. So it's not always that we want to be recognized, that we just don't want to be humiliated. But either one actually is a form of attraction and aversion. So that fear of humiliation is also impure, in that the devotee should be unperturbed, actually. If they are humiliated, if they are put down, it's a sign of if it's a sign of advancement. If one gets chastised in front of other devotees or whatever, that particular situation would be considered nightmarish for that devotee, then one should realize that it shouldn't affect them. There shouldn't be emotional attachment to that, because that is simply pertaining to the body, and it's just simply pertaining to the ego, and it's simply pertaining to the intellect. So, after doing some books for some time, one may think, well, maybe I need to change my ashram, or maybe I need to change my service, and there may be completely legitimate reasons for doing so. So how does one then apply? If changing a service, changing ashram is actually, it presents, it solves some problems, but also presents problems. So it may solve the problem of loneliness or feeling incomplete in some way, should you have the good fortune. But it may create the other problem, in that Prabhupada did not want grihastas to be, dependent on temples. It's supposed to be that the grihasta contributes to the temple. And even this standard, is extremely high. It's extremely high. And Prabhupada, I'm talking about renunciation of the fruits for a grihasta. That Prabhupada said very often, it's established as an irrevocable fact, that Prabhupada wanted grihastas to donate 50%. So was Prabhupada not in touch with reality when he made this? Was Prabhupada deluded? Was Prabhupada bewildered by the material energy? I mean, who can survive on 50% of their income? Who can survive on that? But still it is there, and still it has to be observed. We can't, if we want to attain pure devotional service, we can't pick and choose which rules from Prabhupada we want to follow. So that's an extremely challenging situation. But it's always solvable, actually. To repudiate the order of the spiritual master is never a good idea. So how would one solve that problem of getting 50%? Well, we have a farm, we have facilities. Could we not make an arrangement whereby the grihastas, pay less in rent in order to make that 50% contribution? I don't know. That's up to management. That's up to management to work out. But Prabhupada stipulates in the Bhagavad Gita on this point that it says the grihastas that can do that should be considered sannyas. They should be considered extremely elevated to be able to do that, to manage that. So that's a very big deal. Even 10%, people struggle to give, or they simply give nothing because it's too hard. So then, what is that? What's the standard of that devotional service according to this shloka? Tadarpanam, offering the result of activities. So if one is not offering the result of some of those activities to Krishna, then actually that is that doesn't even fall to the category of mode of goodness. So that's not even reaching sattva gun. Or Sudha Sattva. It's a bit sophisticated, it's a bit complicated. But what to speak of Sudha Sattva? Sudha Sattva means that there's absolutely no motivation for giving that money. Absolutely no motivation. I might give that money to the temple 50%, but I sure as heck want people to know that I'm giving that 50%. Okay, so that's good. That's mode of goodness. But is it Sudha Sattva? Is it Sudha Sattva? No, you couldn't really say that's Sudasattva, could you? So giving the money and to not want the people to know and to keep it quiet, then that's Sudasattva. That's very high level. And similarly, with brahmacharis, it also becomes difficult. If suddenly a brahmachari inherits money or comes across money, what does one do with this money? Should it be given to the temple? Should it be given to the guru? Should it be kept for emergencies? Should we follow Rupa Goswami's example? Give 50%, 25% to 50% to Krishna, 25% to relatives, and the other 25% for emergencies. I think it's inconclusive. Let's say it's inconclusive. So, but it's very practical. These are practical dilemmas that devotees have, everywhere around the world on a daily basis. It's like, what do I do with this money? How do I give that money? I may be prepared to give that money. I may be prepared to give that sacrifice. I would otherwise give 50%. I would otherwise give 100%. But I don't feel that the management is doing quite a good enough job. And so therefore, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z with this money. So what should we do in this situation? No? When we feel like management is not handling this properly, and I don't feel I can surrender to this, and this is not theoretical. This is a very common issue. Because if people don't see the purity in the management, then they feel, well, why should I have to surrender? Why should I make the sacrifices? And the reason you should make the sacrifice is because that is not your position. That is not your duty. Your duty is according to your varna and your ashram. And that's it. So therefore, if you're in a position and you may have legitimate questions about the competency of management, and by the way, I think the management here is terrific, so it's got absolutely nothing to do with Srimachalam, for the record. But obviously these are practical things, and these things should be discussed openly. And to this end, the reason one should do it is because you have to do your duty. It's not, Krishna's not making you responsible for how you respond to management, but you are responsible for your position and your varna. So if you are purporting to be brahmachari, then one must follow the rules of brahmacharya. One must follow the rules of the temple. One must respect the injunctions as applicable. So to perform that duty. So that's mode of goodness. And as Prabhupada was describing mode of goodness to Janardan Babu, who I met in LA, just a very, very fascinating, wonderful devotee. And Janardan was describing how he was coming down off different substances because he'd just met Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was trying to teach him this lesson about duty, about mode of goodness. And then he said, "You see this table?" He said, "Yes, Prabhupada, of course I see the table." And he goes, "Great. Now, do you see this? Do you see on this table there is an ant?" And Janardan looked and looked, and he just couldn't see an ant. And so he sort of said, "Yeah, no." And Prabhupada said, "We have a duty, and our duty is to help this ant become Krishna conscious. And he was saying, not only I couldn't see the ant, but now I had a duty to this ant that I couldn't see. And even if we can help this little ant become a little bit Krishna conscious, then our whole mission is a success. So, what is the purport of that? The purport of that is that we can't be attached to how things are being managed beyond our power. Which is quite a profound lesson in itself, in that we only have to really focus on how we're performing, how we become exemplary. Because if we get involved in protesting or trying to do actions which are beyond our role, then it creates further issues and further tension. And we simply have to depend on authorities, depend on Krishna, and understand that in the long run, these things will sort themselves out. Some sooner, and some later. So again, the understanding of Krishna consciousness has to be coupled with the understanding of the modes. So Satyam Rajas Tama Ita Guna Prakriti Sambhava. So goodness, passion and ignorance are always going to be there in this material existence. And what we have to do is find a way to navigate Krishna consciousness while dealing with these modes, which are indeed very powerful. And the modes are, of course, used by Mahamaya to frustrate and distract the devotee. And a sincere devotee of Rupa Goswami, as we are Rupa Anugas, must understand that there are not only gross temptations, but there are also subtle temptations that are used by Mahamaya to pull the devotee away from Krishna's service. And one of the subtle ways of achieving this is by frustrating the devotee, by agitating. So there's the slogan, Bhageshvaya prashaktayam taya partha chetasham. The Bhogeshvara, the attachment to luxury, attachment to material opulence, that's more the gross side. But the subtle side is creating impediments on the path. So these are subtle ways in which Maya infiltrates the consciousness of the aspirant, is by creating obstacles, such as, practically speaking, it may be that devotee A becomes agitated by Maya and then does not treat devotee B well, and then devotee B is also now somewhat disturbed from that. So the mode of goodness dictates that we are to not get upset about these disturbances, to not be frustrated by this notion that we are not receiving enough honor, for instance, or that we're being dishonored in some way, whether it's fair or unfair, whether it's real or unreal or imagined. It is critical that the devotee remained on the Brahmabhuta platform, on the mode of goodness platform, at least, in that they are not brought down, not dragged down. That's the whole purpose. The whole purpose of these subtle attacks by Maya is to pull the devotee down into the mode of passion, Rajagun. Du usparena analenacha, and Rajagun burns like fire. Rajagun cannot be satiated. It cannot be satisfied. So any politics that begin, any that might become from a perception that one has been dishonored in some way, and some politics is created. Well, politics is also a manifestation of envy in some way. All these passions exacerbate or make worse the situation and drag the devotee away from Suddha Sattva and Sattva Gun. And so this is where more offenses can occur. So the mind, and again this comes back to controlling the mind. In this way the mind can be the best of friend or the worst enemy. So it's easy to say, hard to achieve. But if one can simply observe the mind throwing a tantrum and then see oneself as separate from the mind, then that's actually a great victory, and that's a great start to mode of goodness, in that one doesn't associate oneself with being the mind, which is constantly flickering. So to get to the stage where one is simply observing it having a tantrum and having an attack, then that is half the victory. And then the mind can start to become a friend. And not only that, you can also observe it in others. You won't get caught off guard in the moment if someone suddenly is in the mode of passion and is yelling at you for some reason. Doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. Then yeah, that may be. They may either be in pure devotional service, or in a acting in Suddha Sattva. But generally speaking, that's not the case. Generally, anger is only reserved for when devotees are blasphemed. So, other than that, generally speaking, or if it's coming from a very high spiritual authority, then that's should be marked as mode of passion. So, it often seems repetitive that we keep going over these same subject matters, but they're so profound and they're so important for establishing fixed devotional service that they need to be understood. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Comments? Additions? Mataji, please.
It's a very interesting topic. You went in lots of different directions. Thank you. On this, I mean that in a good way, yeah. Because you came in from on the mind topic and on our different gunas and different brahmana, kshatriya, sort of modus. And on this, in the purport by Srila Prabhupada to this verse, when we speak about devotional service in the mode of goodness, that's already quite good, or it's already getting to a point where it is somewhere a bit closer. Yesterday we spoke in a lecture about devotional service just in the mode of passion, so where it's really just for our own, in the name of God, but for our own benefit, right?
Yes.
So and then also you mentioned in a lecture today about how we can try to find the words, that we have so many different considerations in spiritual life. We spoke on this point about money and what you give, what you don't give, why you give. There's so many aspects in our spiritual life, and sometimes I wonder if we make it too complicated these days. When you speak to Prabhupada disciples who were actively serving, actually most of them all were, you sort of hear this sort of simplicity sometimes, okay? He said we do, very, or if you also speak to Narahari Mataji, just how they got on with it. And one understands, of course, that one shouldn't just turn off like the ability to think, it's not just like blong, it's over. But sometimes it feels like we go too much to the other extreme and going too much into okay, I'm here, but what should I do next? And what should happen next? And what's happening with my life? And what and how and why? And, all these sort of streams of thought which often make devotees leave. And then it's not that they're necessarily in a better situation when they leave, just, the mind. Do you have any comments on this? Sorry that I went in. To
summarize the question, I think you're asking, in broad terms, without going too deeply into the Varnashram Dham and getting too mental about it, is there a way of sort of simplifying it so one can remain fixed in Krishna consciousness without getting disturbed and misled by the mind? Yeah, more or less. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm still struggling with my own mind. Sometimes I feel strong over my mind, sometimes not so strong. And sorry, I'm not trying to make the question about me, but I'm just sort of using me as an example. I guess all devotees have this, how can I improve this, and how can this be better, and what's wrong with that? I mean, it's a really hard question to answer for me. I think Guyamakyati Prichtiti is that you should discuss it with other Vaishnavas. If they're not significant thoughts, then you really shouldn't pay them too much mind. But if there's something troubling, and if there's something significant that could be positive, that could be a solution, then seeking counsel is always intelligent, always an intelligent idea. That being said, scriptures also recommend that one shouldn't seek too much counsel, because that can also be bewildering, in that you start looking for, as Govinda Dev Prabhu was saying the other day, you then look for the most favorable answer. Or one looks for the most, not you, me, but one looks for the most favorable answer, shall we say. So, yeah, I mean, I envy devotees that can be simple, that can have that arjavam and just do their thing, not get mental. It's a wonderful quality, actually. And that's, there was a letter, I can't recall it was sort of this very humble Mataji who was just saying, yeah, I'm not smart, and I just want to do this for you, Prabhupada. And he wrote back saying, just basically glorifying, to say, yes, it's good to be dumb in Krishna consciousness. Be like Jada Bharata and just do the service. That's a good way to be. It's actually a good way to be, and it's elevated. It's not like she's unintelligent. That's not true at all. She's in Krishna consciousness, so she's got very high intelligence. So imbibing that humility, but obviously if there's something which is rupturous, if there's something that's really upsetting you, then you have to speak to someone. That's Guyama. You have to inquire, or you see another devotee is upset or not doing well, then one should inquire confidentially, and one should confidentially respond. With regard to conquering the mind, then it has to be It has to be trained. It has to be whipped into submission. Or beaten with a shoe 100 times in the morning and 100 times in the evening, according to Om Vishnupad Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj Goswami. It has to be beaten into submission, which sounds a little violent, but it's a rascal. So what can be done? It's always going to be there. You have to. It goes back to the chanting on a practical sense. How do we start to control the mind? Well, we first focus on the Maha Mantra when we're chanting Hare Krishna, and we make sure that the mind's not, because it's constantly going, it's constantly playing all this nonsense in our minds. So it has to be blocked out, and that's by hearing Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So other practical techniques of blocking out the mind. Stop doing the activity that might be promoting the mind to do this. So, like if I'm online, out of habit, I will just quickly check what the headlines are. Because I was always into politics, but that's okay. I mean, I've read different things. Prabhupada says it's okay not to be ignorant of what's going on in the outside world, but on the other hand, one shouldn't be engaged in prajalpa, because it's prajalpa as well. So a few minutes maybe. But the point is, if I'm looking at that, then I'm not thinking of Krishna at that time. I'm just not thinking of Krishna. So. The mind will then can be carried away. So it really is a matter of, okay, my mind's thinking this, what's my activity? What am I doing with my activity? There's an activity you can do which is going to help you control your mind more in Krishna consciousness, isn't it? Isn't it like that though? If we're thinking nonsense, or we're going, I'm not sure about this place, or whatever, or I don't know about this person, I'm not sure I want to work under him or with him or her. Think about what you're doing. That's sort of mindfulness. In psychology, they call it mindfulness. It's getting mindful of where you are. So just even touching things around you, and like it's a really, just touching things around you, or if you're outside, you touch a tree or whatever, that helps you bring you back to where you actually are. It stops you being so mental. But I find personally, just switching the mind off, going, you know what, this is rubbish, I'm a bit distracted here, let me pick up Shastra, let me do some reading, let me do some chanting, let me play some harmonium, and then again the mind is subdued, because it can't overcome Krishna consciousness. It can't, but it's like all the devotees who leave, it's because they're just caught, they just get distracted, they get distracted, or they get compromised, and it's really just breaking that meditation, the meditation being Krishna consciousness. So in other words, they stop doing an activity, or they'll do something that's not quite Krishna conscious, and then it goes into something really un-Krishna conscious, right? And it's all because you're breaking the meditation. So my realization recently is we should see Krishna consciousness as the meditation. It is actually, so the chanting Hare Krishna is a microcosm of what Krishna consciousness actually is. And Krishna consciousness is a full meditation. So anytime we do something which is not really Krishna conscious, we're kind of breaking the meditation. And then that creates a portal, a vortex, for Maya to come in and then hit us hard. Anyway, I'm just sort of going off my recent realizations on that subject matter. So I hope that's helpful in some small way.
Can I comment to the...
You may.
Or does someone else want to say, Bishai, you want to say?
Please go on.
Keep the ball rolling.
It was very nice to pull some nectar out. It's nicer when someone speaks of their own realization. Yeah, I see when the mind goes off on a track, it's like literally running down a track, and in that moment you think it's the best track, but actually you're in some crazy black space sometimes, and you just keep running, because it's gone, it's distracted.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting on the point of trying to bring the mind back to here and now, which of course is also the mode of goodness. I did a lot of exercises beforehand when distraction, when when you are in the present moment, how different it is. You know, we speak of passion being in the future, which often many of us proactive people are. What's next, right? Or in the past, in mode of ignorance. So to bring us really back in the present, I realize so little of my time is in the present often. But when I am in the present and I'm in goodness, when I'm really there with the chanting of the Hare Krishna, I'm in the present moment. And then on this other point also of when problems arise, how we deal with these problems, really to pray to the Lord that he sends one or two people to take shelter in, not just, as you mentioned, this point, to speak to everybody until you get the answer that you wanted to hear. And also, facing these problems, one can also brainstorm, but in an environment which is somehow spiritual. So either with kirtan or something playing to help one work through the problems. The amount of devotees I saw who faced their problems in the night after they were burnt out or stressed or everything, the conclusion sometimes that one makes isn't conducive because we're in a completely different mode. Often, this sort of let's sleep on it often does make a difference, right? And to have that perspective so that all our decisions, if not completely 100% based on devotional service, are at least heading towards mode of goodness, then it makes life easier, So.
Yeah, and it's a matter. So when you're focused on the several really good points there. So when the mind is running and you're on track with your mind, I mean, it's now on a different meditation. So it's focused on a different meditation now. And then it's feeding itself and going, well, yes, this is good. And this is good because of A, B, C, D. And I can see that working and that sounds nice. So you've got to break that meditation. The idea is to keep the Krishna conscious meditation, but break the non-Krishna conscious meditation. So if there's a stream of consciousness going on and you're off track, and you're off track, then it could be something as simple as just putting on or listening to a bhajan or putting on a lecture. It sounds almost glib or too easy, but it really is that easy. It's just a matter of, it really is, I'm not saying it's easy, I mean it really is that simple in terms of, and then the mind starts listening to the lecture and it goes, oh, I'm fine actually. Has everyone had that experience too? It's like it's so upset and then you distract it and you do something else and you're like, oh, actually I'm fine. It's like, what was it doing? Because it was just feeding itself. It was just feeding itself. I mean, I just remember, not to disrespect my father, but I just remember when I was young, he'd get angry and he sort of had a military background. We did have a military background. And then he would just get angry and then he would just get angrier and angrier. And it's like, why are you getting angrier? It's like, because he's feeding his own anger. That's right. So he's actually feeding that it becomes sense enjoyment, right? Sorry? It builds up. So it's feeding itself. It's actually feeding itself. So that's why you have to break that digression, break that false meditation. Sounds simple, but it's hard. Because when the mind's really powerful, you don't think it's your mind, you think it's you. You think it's your pure intelligence which is speaking now. It's got nothing to do with my mind. This is as it is. So it's hard. It's hard. It's not. And Arjuna mentions this is like trying to control the wind, trying to control a hurricane. So very, very advanced to be able to do that. There are other good points. I've now forgotten what you covered there, but thank you for the contribution. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Ramananda, Gopal Prabhu.
No, I came just.
You got nothing? You got nothing to bring to the table today.
Huh?
You've got nothing for us today.
I mean, there's many things to speak about, but I don't know if it's now.
Speaking on the mind.
Do you want to say something?
Yes, Prabhu.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I was given this class too today. I didn't know I was giving class. So you can give a spontaneous comment.
Was very good points what you made, and you said one has to speak about such things like how practically grihastas and brahmacharis and sannyasis collect money and spend the money, and how we do this now practically. You know, do we follow Srila Prabhupada's, you know, or Rupa Goswami's instruction, or is it nowadays not so practical? I mean, this is big discussion. It's not really for the class. This is more like some GBC, maybe not GBC, because this is more like the community. You know, it depends on the community. You know, you made also the point, you know, what is if you're not trustworthy, or if the management is not trustworthy. That's all considerations what are very, very important. But in the end, you wrapped it up and said, actually, it doesn't matter, because your duty is to give.
Yeah, your duty is to your Varnashram Dharma.
Yeah. And
it's to Krishna. So Krishna sees, Super Soul knows exactly what's going on everywhere.
Yeah.
And is only concerned with how are you dealing with this situation. And then again, it all goes back to the Shikshastika, doesn't it? So in terms of following, to be more tolerant than a tree, you know, to not expect, you know, that's how we survive, is getting back to Shikshastika. Yeah. So but you initially said, Prabhu, because there's a sloka in, I believe it's Srimad Bhagavatam, where it says that actually controversial subjects should not be avoided, because by discussing these, it strengthens the mind. You know this verse?
Yeah. I don't know this verse, but it's for sure true.
So my point, or my perspective, my point of view would be that is that we should. I don't like orders of Srila Prabhupada being minimalized, and I see that occasionally happen. And I'm not trying to make a big point of it or anything, but when things are sort of said, well, he said so. I mean, people have actually said, well, Prabhupada said so many things. You know, I mean, that's not good. I mean, Prabhupada's the Acharya, so he shouldn't be considered ordinary, or that there was a Brahma Pramana Vipralipsa, that some mistake was made. So that's what I take issue with, is if some issues or orders of Prabhupada are minimized and said, well, that's not really practical nowadays. I take huge issue with that, actually. Because otherwise you're essentially saying that he is subject to illusion, he is subject to cheating. Not you, I'm just saying. Is it?
No, yeah.
Are we saying that Prabhupada is subject to illusion? He's subject to mistakes?
No, I mean, that's a rough or that's a strong statement from the other side. But there are for sure considerations of time, place, and circumstances.
Yes.
And Prabhupada had to make adjustments. So in due course of time, you know, we maybe have to make also adjustments, or find our own way how to understand personally one instruction of Srila Prabhupada. You know, we have already so many issues in our, but it's another topic. You know, we have so many issues. Did Prabhupada say we should wear dhotis or not? You know, some devotees very strong about it. That Prabhupada never ever said we should wear dhotis. It's just, you know, whatever. I don't go into this discussion, you know, but so many things people understood from Prabhupada's instructions, what in the end makes a major difference in our appearance. You know.
Yeah, okay, so I would love to.
Just because you said, you know, to evaluate Prabhupada's instructions is dangerous. It is, but on the other hand, we have to also independent, thoughtful, in some sense, what is, of course, something what the Brahminical class actually should do.
Yeah,
and therefore we have.
I'm not saying. Look, if the GBC in their infinite wisdom decide to, they're going to have X policy, right? And I find a letter from Prabhupada which countermands that. I'm not advising that someone then just ignores what the GBC have said with that. They're the ultimate managerial authority. With regard to time, place, and circumstance, that is the duty of the Acharya, to work out what is to be done and not to be done in time, place, and circumstance. So if we are to intelligently apply that, just because Prabhupada said something in 1968 does not mean that that's applicable in 1976, right? in that he might have gave an instruction that is somewhat, and I don't find many of them actually, I don't find hardly any that are contradictory, but let's just say we found one that did contradict, but that was later. Well, logically speaking, the latter instruction would supersede the earlier instruction in that circumstance. So I'm just saying, time, place, and circumstance. So I think that would be an intelligent way of applying Srila Prabhupada's instructions, that we say that, for instance, in 1967, there was a very small society, therefore, and let's just say ISKCON goes through a period where it becomes small again, then does that mean that the instructions from Srila Prabhupada during the period when ISKCON was small are now more applicable than when ISKCON was large and had many devotees and had, could do, for instance, a much higher standard of puja, right? That might be a consideration. That might be the question brought before. So that's up for the GBC to decide. All I'm saying is that I don't like and I take issue if major things that Prabhupada said are just being discounted as if they're not important. That's what I take issue with. Because I think the job of the GBC is to ensure that those instructions are executed correctly and as best as the devotees can do within that time, place, and circumstance. So, and if they need to make an adjustment, then I think they should look to where Prabhupada made such adjustments when the society was small, when the society faced this problem or that problem or whatever problem. Not that we go into this saying, well, that was, do you see what I'm saying? So that's just my view, whether that's correct or not.
I mean, for you, it's probably, yeah, I mean, we don't have to make this into a discussion, I don't think so. Because, even GBC is made out of many individuals, and these individuals, they have different understandings and opinions about how to apply Srila Prabhupada's order or instructions in different times and circumstances. Therefore, it takes such a long while till a resolution is made. Book changing so many different things, and we see how what makes it for friction in the society.
Yes.
So therefore we so lucky we have Srila Prabhupada's instructions, but even there you have to see, the most valuable instructions are those who are written in the books, right?
Yes.
Especially Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, something like that.
Yes.
And then you have the instructions what Prabhupada gave in letters, for example.
Yes.
And then there's something what he said in day-to-day, or in personally conversations, and also in personally letters.
Yes.
To the one devotee, he said, you should go on Sankirtan, if I pick this letter, everybody should go on Sankirtan.
Right.
No, but another person, he said, no, you should stay and worship the deities, for example, or something like that.
Yes.
I mean...
No, they're excellent points, and I can only think of the bit of legal training that I have, and that is the way that should be handled, or has been handled for hundreds of years in the common law system, legal system, is that this is considered different forms of evidence, and the different evidence will have different weight. Yeah. Some are weightier, some are heavier than the others. So the books are considered almost the highest, I would say, right? Almost the highest. And then you have letters, which is written. It's bona fide. We can form them. Then you might have a conversation which is recorded. Well, that'd be the next one. But then you might have a conversation which is just attested to, which is really hearsay. Hearsay being Hörensagen. Hörensagen. Sagt man auf Deutsch, oder?
Was?
Hörensagen, oder?
Ach so. Aha. It was a German expression. I tried to translate it.
Yeah. So hearsay, we call that, because it's a bit difficult English. So so that's why they grade the evidence. So you're quite right. The Prabhupada says that his books are the law books, right? They're the law books. So, and moreover than that, if Prabhupada gives a written instruction as acharya, which is signed by him, I mean, because that's so specific to a particular situation, and that would be the highest, the court would consider that, or arguably, well, that was what the lawyers would argue, the barrister would argue, this is the highest because it's pertaining specifically to this particular circumstance. So, and that's right, and that's why I think these discussions are healthy, because ultimately, even if we, as individuals, and we all have our perspective, and frankly, we're entitled to our perspective. We're entitled to have our understanding. However, if our perspective is contradictory to that of the GBCs or the authorities, and you've had an opportunity to vent your opinion, it's been heard, then at that point, one should accept what their decisions are, because they are the authorities. They are presently the authorities in charge of that. So it sounds simple, but it's actually, it can be a very difficult thing, because you know you're right, right? You know you're right. And that may be true or that may not be true. But we have to be humble. And Prabhupada's greatest, and they may be on the wrong trajectory, but again, it comes back to us. It comes back to our relationship with Krishna. So Prabhupada has made this clear that in these circumstances, we actually, where we think we're convinced that we're right, in such a circumstance, still take the humble position. We still take the humble position. And we accept the authority. Why? Why do we do this? Because this is our love for Prabhupada. Our love for Prabhupada is our oath that we are going to cooperate with our God brothers. And often, cooperation means taking a subordinate role.
Reminds me, yesterday I listened to the podcast of Namras with a devotee called Janardan. He's a Guru Kuli, and he is considered the youngest temple president in ISKCON. I think he's somewhere in Auckland or something, in Australia.
No, Auckland's New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand? I don't know. So I think he's in Australia. Maybe you know him. He's a Guru Kuli. Anyway, and he said exactly the same point, that that management sometimes, first of all, nobody sees what they're really doing.
And no one knows the problems that they have. It's really...
And then he said, since he's in this position as well for quite some years now, he is mostly inspired if we manage to cooperate. And this means sometimes to take the humble position, although you're right, but to say, okay, Prabhu, we go, although I'm not agreeing with your point, but this time we go your way, just to move forward, because we have to move forward in particular situations. So it was actually the same point what you said, sometimes we have to take the humble position and accept the opinion of somebody else, although we know that my opinion is maybe better, or, but this gives you the opportunity then the next time, that this other devotee maybe say, okay, now maybe this time we go with your way, or...
Yeah, and and one day you might be temple president. So it really depends on your adhikari and your ability to accept authority. And this is actually one of the demonic qualities. The demonic qualities is not recognizing authority. I'm not applying that to devotees, but I'm just using it as a point, a philosophical point. Is that often the proud and the arrogant, they don't want to recognize the authority. So often the criminal class, which is often considered the lowest class, they don't recognize any authority. I'm the authority. It's really arrogant, actually. Crime and criminal psychology is very narcissistic and arrogant in that everyone else has to follow the law, but I don't.
No, but this is what we do. Therefore, we are here. We don't accept Krishna as authority.
That's right.
Therefore, we are here. And even if amongst criminals there is some kind of hierarchy, but they're just waiting till the one who's on top makes a mistake, and then they chop him down. And this you see even in modern...
and that's in the corporate world too, exactly.
Yeah, and you see it's in modern politics.
Yes, and politics, yeah.
That
any position
maybe
of power,
anything. Even amongst devotees, there's a temple president for years and years and years. He made so much good things. He, progressed with the community, and then he makes a mistake.
Out.
Yes.
Out. How could he?
Sure.
So he gets overcome by the modes once. Yeah.
And we're just waiting for this opportunity.
Yeah. So as Prabhupada said in this letter, he said, yes, be like Jadhabharata. Be like Jadhabharata. I don't know whether you heard that part in the... Yeah, so be like Jadhabharata. So that's a good instruction for us. If we're having these problems where we know, then we say, okay, I just be like Jadhabharata. It sounds easy, but it can be extremely, extremely hard to be tolerant in these times. And a lot of devotees have left over these disputes, over management disputes and all this stuff. So this is Maya just testing. It's just testing. It's just poking its way at the false ego. It's looking for weaknesses in it. It's always probing for weaknesses.
Yeah, but still, okay, we should finish this point, but maybe it's something for Prashadam discussion or something like that in a later point. There is also the point where you say, okay, we have to accept authorities, but we also had experiences that devotees followed authorities and then it was a big mistake.
Yes.
So one has to apply also some certain intelligence and sometimes discriminate. So
yes.
Then that's a big question where you can give rise to a doubt.
Yes.
And when you step in or step out.
Yes. So that's up to the devotees, and it's an excellent point, and that's up to the individual devotees' Krishna consciousness. So you may, for instance, say one shouldn't just blindly follow authorities. That's not good. That's not good. But so this is the real where intelligence is applied, right? So, for instance, there may be a circumstance where I don't agree with what the authority is doing. However, it doesn't affect my service. It doesn't affect, and I believe the instructions, or let's just say, I believe that the service that they're giving me is not controversial in my mind. So I can tolerate this. I can do this, yeah? And I can offer respects and just accept it. So that's advisable. If, for instance, the instruction was to go, okay, we want you to sell these T-shirts, which are bootleg, or whatever, and you go, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this. And so I would, in a non-confrontational way, say to the authorities, look, I'm sorry about this, Prabhu. It's probably my Maya, but I don't feel comfortable doing this. Perhaps I can do this service, and suggest another service they can do. For instance, that's an extreme example, but everything's happened in ISKCON. So, never say never. So, I think that's how one should handle that particular situation, if it's to do with service. And of course, in very, very extreme circumstances, one can always start looking for another temple, contacting other authorities. I mean, how extreme do you want to take it? So, intelligence has to be there. And it's very bewildering, because often we just want to switch off the intelligence and go, no, he's a good man or lady, I'm just going to follow them. And that's not really advisable. You shouldn't shut down your own rationale and your own reasoning. I don't think that's advisable either.
I mean, it's anyway, it's a discussion. I think the ladies are...
Anyway, yeah, I think that we've taken off. We can carry on in Prashadam Hall, but... Okay, Hare Krishna, thank you very much for your attention. Haribo. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
So much friction in the moment, all this full things, and it was really, really tough to cut the line and say, okay, and when should one say something? Probably you hear about the whole Puna stuff and what everybody who's associated or was in pictures with him now is like taken down. What is a little bit this mentality, like, we just wait till you make a mistake and then everything else what you... that was the Bible teaching? Yeah. Principle. Yeah. That was same as they say, then it was sort of known that something went wrong, but still so many people didn't say something.
Yeah, and that's the problem, and that's why I'm trying to emphasize the point that there shouldn't be a culture of silence, but there should be a culture of protocol about how these things are dealt with and how these things are discussed. So the culture of, well, no, we just don't discuss that, and then, well, that's unhealthy, because devotees are going to discuss it, and they're just going to discuss it elsewhere, right? So
yeah, but there's also the element of relationship. You know,
no, I'm just saying, keep the individual out, and let's just talk about the subject. That's what I'd say. So I wouldn't, you don't talk about the individual, but just say, this is the problem, this is what's happening.
Yeah, but still, there's, if you're my good friend, we have a relationship, you know, and I noticed something what is maybe a little bit off the track, a little bit strange, but still, because I'm loyal to you, you know, I would not touch this subject. I would go around it just to make your, whatever, you know. So, and then this things comes out, and then says, well, you were always with them. Why you can tell? So you part of the crime.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and there's. I've read comments by Prabhupada on this. It's like if you're part of a pack, if you're part of you join the crime. If you acquiesce or if you know about it, you do nothing, you're part of the crime.
And this is what's going on, but he had many friends, many popular friends.
Well, they should have asked. They should have been, they should have asked. Why not?
Yeah,
and you're responsible. You are an authority.
This is what they didn't do, and now it's a big thing.
Well, that's right. Well, they're undermining their own authority, aren't they? Because they failed to act.
Yeah. So this is.
So they've got to pay the consequences.
Yeah, but as I mean, this makes a big impact now on ISKCON, face of ISKCON.
Yeah.
This will change so many things, and therefore it's really important that we speak about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
It has to come on the table, because otherwise we will.
Because otherwise it's a bit insulting to say that devotees aren't intelligent enough to discuss it. Do you know what I mean? To say, no, we're the authorities, you just do what we say, we never want you to discuss it or ask questions. You know, it's a bit insulting.
Yeah.
It insults the intelligence of the average devotee.
And ISKCON has kind of a self-cleaning mechanism. If you try to put it under the table, it will explode back in your face.
Yeah, that's right. So
I don't know all the gurus or all this, soulness or choice or whatever. Everything what went a little bit wrong, it didn't last for long. Then it exploded and became a big mess.
Yeah.
Because
it wasn't nipped in the bud. And the problem is, it creates a bigger mess because they're saying, well, actually, it seems like you have a policy of keeping things of hush-hush, a hush-hush policy,
Yeah.
Rather than a proactive approach. What? This is going on? Well, let's do an inquiry. You know what I mean? Let's immediately.
This brings us to.
So that's not a culture. Therefore, it appears that there's a culture of cover-ups, which is not good at all.
No, but it's basically, this is the reason why people say, I don't want to have anything to do with God. I don't want to have anything to do with religion. Yeah. But I mean, it's not just the ISKCON thing.
No.
It happens everywhere.
It's the corruptness of man.
Yeah.
Man is corrupt.
Yeah, but if we claim we are a follower of God, and then we do some nonsense, this will be the cause of other people saying, I don't want to have anything to do with God.
That's right. Particularly if you're in a leadership role.
Whatever, if you are an influential or inspiring person.
Hey, well, thank you.